Good evening, everybody. Hope you're all well. Hope you're all good. Welcome to another Tuesday night Avenger call. And straight off the bat, let me know that you can hear me and the volumes are all good. Just jump straight into everything. There is a bit of a poll going on at the moment, so if you do have the time, I just want to know whether or not you think the correction is big enough. Appreciate what price action is doing at the moment. Not we've settled things. We're gonna have a bit of a chat about price, in terms of price for Bitcoin a little bit later on, but I'd appreciate if you could comment on that. Just see what I'm doing. Nobody said anything yet, so I'm not sure if you can. What I'll do is I will just crack on and hopefully start spamming. The voice is coming and going. That's what I was afraid of. I don't have goodness. Thanks, Chris, for letting me know. I'm going to keep on speaking. Let me know if it clears up. Otherwise, we'll do the old classic reset. Okay, just bear with me a second whilst I try and sort that out. Let's try that one again. Hopefully, that's resolved it. Good old classic off and on trick. Normally does it, but we'll find out soon enough. The only other thing it could be, let's just make sure nothing is better. Perfect. Okay, let's crack on. We wasted enough time there. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for all being here. And yeah, we've got quite a bit to go through tonight. I was hoping it's going to be relatively short, but there's been quite a few fairly decent questions that have been asked in RT Avengers. So I want to just run through some of those a little bit later on. Obviously, tiny bit on the news. We're going to then talk about whether or not Bitcoin is flying a bit too close to the sun and what that ultimately might mean for both short and medium term price action. And then we'll just have a look at some charting and we'll go for there. Try and wrap it up within 90 minutes, but we shall see. So, price action, just very high level view at the moment. We've had that pullback. It was a nice little bounce off around about the 60, 61 level. We've shot back up to 70, but we are seeing a bit of a pullback at the moment. Nothing to be too worried about. We've had some pretty strong days over the last couple of days. So, you know, not even a 1% pullback is not necessarily anything to be worried about. We can have a look at some higher time frames a little bit later on. When we go down to the bottom left corner, I'll bring it up so it's full screen so you can see it. We'll have a look at Casper. I know few people are sort of doing the Casper seesaw, especially with Tau. Casper's not looking great for me personally at the moment. We've obviously been having a bit of a downtrend and a lot of cryptos had been doing quite well. It had dropped back down. Then we saw a very strong bounce this time last week. But actually, this on the daily, if you put it on the 12-hour, it is starting to look like another double top has formed. So we've got a little bit of a double top there. And not to mention, I mean, I'm going to work for freehand, so we just won't look good. But you can kind of see we're forming lower high after lower high, lower low after lower low. So not the best position to be in at the moment. It has been quite a heavy fall at the moment, around about 6%. So we shall see where we are. Hey there, Raheem. How are we doing? Okay, let's drop that one back. Ethereum, pretty much following Bitcoin. Another little steady pullback there. We'll go into these prices a little bit better at the moment. What I would say is there's some sort of compression happening. We all know what we think of compressions at the moment. Maybe we are going to see some sort of pushback down to the low 3000s. And then BitTensor, this is probably one of the big ones. I know a lot of us are very heavily invested. Oops, not that one. In BitTensor. So we will go into this one in more detail later on. But Simon and I were talking about this last week, not just to each other, but in the group. And we were worried about whether or not we're starting to see some form head and shoulders forming with a neckline here. And look at this. We had that neckline. We punched through it. And then guess what's happened? We've had that Kobo. And so all eyes for me at the moment are kind of on this, let's just call it 560 level. I think a close below there. We might start to see some falling. And the thing is, we had such a rapid climb from the low 400s. There isn't really much stopping us, you know, 480, 450 maybe. But we could see a little bit further falling, especially if we're going to see a correction in the rest of the market. So something to keep an eye on. It's not, you know, all doom and gloom. We do need pullback, so don't worry. Don't think any of those are bad projects just because they're going to go down for a little bit. We just need to bear those in mind. Now, before we move on to the news, this is a public service health announcement. We all saw yesterday in Discord that another member has unfortunately been hacked. And whilst at the moment, we're still waiting for, as Simon put it, the post-mortem and a bit more of the details there. What we can say is it was a fairly sophisticated hack, which has involved, engaging and speaking with an active party that then somehow managed to get some malware or whatever it is on to a computer and then ultimately be able to drain someone's account there. Now, that's horrible. We've had a few in the last 6 months in which that's happened. So, big health warning, everybody, that just because you've done something 10, 15, 100,000 times doesn't mean that you can't be susceptible for it. So the best thing that we can do is make ourselves as hard a target as possible. And as difficult as it is, from what I understand, and I've not spoken to the individual directly, the problem was that the vast majority of their crypto wasn't actually being protected by a hardware wallet. And that is what we talk about. That is absolutely the fundamental thing. I don't care if you only have $100 in crypto. Hopefully you got more than that. But if you've got 4 figures in crypto or more, you should be buying one of these here. I don't care which one you go for. Ledgers are relatively cheap. You can go all the way up to Trezors. I mean, we've even got here someone using an old iPod. But ultimately, there are plenty of ways of protecting yourself and providing some form of protection. So that if someone does get access to your PC or your crypto laptop, there is a physical device that should be protecting you. And that is an absolute must. If anybody on this call, on this recording, watching it back, whatever, doesn't have some form of hardware wallet, stop what you're doing right now and go and order one. I will more than happily personally talk you through step by step of setting it up. Right now, from what I understand, this person has gone and lost a significant amount of money, or crypto at least. And there's no way of recovering it, because it's on the blockchain. Like with a lot of other things, they've been able to see where it's gone, and it has gone. And we talk about it all the time, and I'm sorry to hark on about it, but this is the most important thing. Whatever you're doing, whenever it's in crypto, just assume that every single person you're speaking to is the enemy, is trying to scam you. Be as super cautious as you can and make sure that you back stuff up as best as you can using a hardware wallet. Now, I'll be honest, probably only about 90% of what I own is backed up by a hardware wallet in one form or another, because I do use exchanges, and that's a risk I'm willing to take. But if I finish using an exchange, I will then move it, if I can, to a hardware wallet. So that's enough of the warning. Hopefully, we'll find out a bit more information about what's actually gone on, and I'm sure we'll talk about that on Thursday, if not next week. Anyhow, moving on to quickly through the news. And this time last week, a couple of days ago, the SEC have started to make indications, no written or verbal confirmation, but the actions they're taking are starting to potentially draw parallels to the fact that actually the futures ETH ETF is likely to be delayed. Now, we know we've got a spot ETF in the mix as well as futures ETFs. Well, the SEC has actually pushed back the decision for the futures ETF to the end of May. Why is that important? Because that takes it to just beyond the dates that we need to establish whether or not we're going to have the spot ETF. And it's unlikely, given how they went through and did the Bitcoin, they went futures first and then spot, that they're going to turn it the other way around. Now, I'm still don't think that the ETH ETF is on the immediate horizon, because we still don't really understand if it's a security or not, and how the SEC are actually going to classify that. But there was a lot of hype around this, and we saw the price of Ethereum lift quite steadily off the back of the Bitcoin spot ETF being approved. And whilst we haven't seen it start to tumble yet, we may find that actually, as the dust all starts to settle, people may start trying to, not necessarily losing faith in Ethereum, but try and back another horse in a race to capitalize on it. So yeah, we shall see where that one ties in. Moving on to some more, I was going to say SEC news, but it isn't. This is the Southern District, the New York Southern District Attorney's Office, whatever. The DOJ as well have charged KuCoin and 2 of their founders with violating anti-money laundering laws. This only came out a few hours ago. There's been quite a bit of FUD, certainly news around KuCoin itself. And for us, I personally use KuCoin quite a lot. I prefer to use it other than Mexi. But ultimately, what this boils down to is they are active within the United States, and they are now been alleged to have sort of not KYC'd the customers sufficiently, and then they breached several laws that are over there. And for what it actually says here is the two founders remain at large. I don't know how serious that necessarily is going to be, but we could see a bit of a shake-up for KuCoin in the United States, and maybe knock-on effects for other countries around the world. So, yeah, just going back, I had a bit of a soul just sitting around on KuCoin because I was waiting to do something. I've decided to move it off because it was just a helpful reminder. It didn't necessarily need to be there. And what you certainly don't want to be is on an exchange in which something happens, assets or funds get frozen whilst it tries to resolve it, and you miss out on a potential move. So, not saying that KuCoin is going to the ground, not saying that this is an FTX type issue, but just I know we use KuCoin, so certainly have a look into what you are keeping on it and why it needs to be there. And then just another interesting one, because someone has asked about meme coins, and a lot of discussion in the crypto chat over the last week or two has actually been about, meme coin scalping, etc. And there's a bit of an interesting one in the king of meme coins, Dogecoin itself, in that actually there was a fractal pattern in 2020, which is playing out almost to the day right now. And could we be starting to see an opportunity for another large move up in Doge? So the fractal pattern in question is, as you see here. So what we had way back when, before it was even, half a cent, it was loitering in and around the 0.02 for about 156 weeks, so give or take 3 years. And then what we saw is back in 2021, we had that meteoric rise where it went from 0.002 all the way up to, I think it got as high as about 60s, maybe even 70 cents. So a colossal rise. Then we see that cool off period, which this time has lasted for 151 weeks. You can't quite see it. Maybe if I zoom in, it doesn't work. But where we're currently sitting right now is, right at the end of that 150 odd week period and at the precipice of a potential further move north. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that this is an opportunity for you to YOLO into it or anything like that. It was just interesting that we've been talking about meme coin mania and trying to get off the back of it. What I would argue is, whilst the current meme coin mania is probably being undertaken by, well, we are retail. Let's not kid ourselves, but retail traders that have stayed within the market for the last 2 years. New retail, or super retail, if you will, those that don't know I was going to say their arse up from their elbow, but I've actually said it. When they come back in and they want to buy on meme coins, what do you think they're going to go to? They're going to go to the bigger meme coins, and it may well be that the likes of Doge, with the backing of X and Elon, and talks about how he made a flippant comment earlier this week that actually maybe it is time to use Dogecoin as a payment mechanism for X. Maybe we start to see that boom. So for those of you that are wanting to do meme coin plays, maybe there's still an opportunity to do on Dogecoin. You might not turn $100 into $1 million, but there could still be a fairly decent return out of it. Okay, leave that one there. So I want to just get on to the overall subject that we were going to talk about, we are going to talk about tonight. And you probably were thinking, what the hell is Harry talking about with Bitcoin flying too close to the sun? Well, don't let it be said that I am not here to educate you. And it's not just about an education in crypto, because let's face it, a lot of you are far more swept up on it than I am on that, but a wider education. I want to talk to you about Icarus, because actually the story of Icarus not only is going to apply to us as traders, but potentially also to Bitcoin. Now, I'm sure most of you actually know the story of Icarus, but for those that may not, very simply, Icarus's dad, a guy called Daedalus, made his son, and I suppose himself, some wings so they could escape. But his dad gave Icarus a warning and basically said, because these wings, were made out of like feathers and wax, for want of a better term, basically said, look, don't fly too high, don't fly too low. If you fly too low, the sea is going to get it all soggy and you're not going to be able to fly. And if you fly too high, you're going to get close to the sun and the wax is going to melt. Well, Icarus set off and he rather enjoyed the sensation of flying, and probably through complacency and hubris, as it says here, he decided to ignore his dad's warnings and wanted to fly higher and higher and higher. And lo and behold, he got too close to the sun, his wings melted, and instead of flying gracefully on a set of wings, he was flapping his arms around like he just jumped off a 10-meter board and didn't want to hit the water, plunged into the sea and drowned. And that's where the saying, or the moral of the story of flying too close to the sun ultimately comes from, because we can get too confident and we can think what we're doing is totally the right way and be blinded by warnings that we've been given and immediate dangers ahead. And those dangers have multiple implications. In this, whilst he wasn't burnt to death, just the wax, which was helping him keep afloat, melted and then started afloat aloft, and he fell in. And the question I suppose I have is, what about Bitcoin at the moment? Because Bitcoin is soaring high. I mean, okay, ignore the tiny little pullback we've had at the moment. Let's have a look at this on the weekly chart. And we do talk about this quite often, but we've got to understand the position that we're finding ourselves in. Since October last year, we have gone from 25,000 to almost 75,000, a 3x, which on a lot of altcoins, that's fairly standard to see. But on Bitcoin, on the King, in a halving year prior to the halving, something that we've never seen before. And so this parabolic, and I do think it is a parabolic one. I mean, what are we on the log? Putting on the log or the linear doesn't actually change anything there. But you can kind of see it is fairly steep up there. We had a little bit of a break for a month and a half or so, around about 42,000. But other than that, it's just green candle after green candle after green candle. And you put it on the monthly chart, and it's even scarier than that, because what we're actually seeing is 7 green candles in a row, something that's never happened in Bitcoin's history. So the question is, are we flying too high, too fast? And if we are, what could be the possible repercussions for that to happen? Well, what caused this? I mean, that's probably the immediate thing to ask, because by understanding what the cause is and whether or not the cause has ceased, may give us a clue as to where we're going. Well, ultimately, it was speculation around the Bitcoin Spot ETFs that gave us the first leg up into the early part of this year. And then the approval of the spot ETFs actually then gave us the booster rocket thereafter. And oops, that's the one. Here we go. And what have we seen so far? You know, the ETFs between them have managed to accumulate 820,000 Bitcoin. Now, that's a little bit of a red herring there, because we know Grayscale had 600,000 of those to start off with, but they have net increased their holdings by 200,000. 200,000 Bitcoin is a significant amount of buy pressure over the last 7 weeks, which is why we've seen this price go as high as it is. Now, last week, we actually saw 5 days in a row of net outflows. We can kind of see by looking at this one here. Again, I'll try and zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. It's just far side investors. There's other ones where you can see much more detail, but I just want to focus really on last week. So we've got the ETFs along the top, and then the red column that's always red is Grayscale BTC, because ever since the ETFs have launched, they've just been selling. But generally what we found, you know, even into the beginning of this month, is that the purchases made by the remainder of the ETFs have far outweighed that of Grayscale selling. And we've seen, you know, 200 billion, you know, 700 million, whatever it may be. But then last week, we actually started to see outflows. And that's one of two reasons. One, Grayscale upped their game. So they were selling more, which doesn't help because they have so much more to sell. But also, it seemed that we were turning off the tap. So the likes of BlackRock, who have been buying like it is going out of fashion, suddenly dropped, you know, by 10 times what they were particularly buying. And by the end of the week, they were buying just a measly 20 million or 19 million's worth. And so these net outflows was stemming quite bad. And what did we see? Go back to the chart, go back to the daily, and we started to see this falling away. Now, there's many reasons why that could have happened. As I say, Grayscale were up in the amount they were selling, which was just outstripping even what the remaining ETFs could buy. But also, it's highly likely that these people that have bought into the ETFs, they realized that they made so much money so fast, because typically when they invest in gold, it doesn't go up like that, that maybe they have decided to cash out. We'll ultimately never know. But what we can see is that when they turn the tap off and there isn't that buy pressure, there seems to be quite a bit of sell pressure. Now, that sell pressure related to a correction of around about 18%, which is what we've seen at the moment. But then today and yesterday, the taps come back on, and we've started to see that buy pressure come back again. So taking us back to what potentially has caused this meteoric rise, it does seem to be quite heavily linked with the Bitcoin Spot ETFs. Now, the Bitcoin Spot ETFs are then almost a self-fulfilling prophecy for the price of Bitcoin, because we get more news on it, we get more coverage. And if you want to go on financial news, there's a lot more talk now about cryptocurrencies, certainly about Bitcoin. If you go on to more traditional news outlets, you start to see more articles about cryptocurrency and about Bitcoin. And it's not always negative. It seems to be more now about what the price is doing and where that is going. So that rise caused by these spot ETFs is then allowing more and more retail to see what's happening. They're suddenly coming back in, getting awoken, and they're starting to ape in. Now, I'm not suggesting that retail alone is what is causing this, because as we've seen, it's more related to the spot ETFs, just given on what happened last week. But the fact of the matter is they are coming in, and so we are starting to see things climb. Now, that's when we get to the next thing, the one thing we've been talking about for absolutely ages, which is fear and greed. Because this is where I'm going to try and take it back to past cycles. We've been living in pretty high levels of greed for the last 6 or 7 weeks. Certainly extreme greed, over 75. We've had it tip up at about 92. And it did drop down with the fall last week. But unfortunately, it only went down for 1 day below extreme greed. It hit to 75, I think, on 1 day. And then we just had another bounce afterwards. And so what we've done is we've never tapered off that greed. So as far as I'm concerned, we're still on a rocket ship towards the sun. And it kind of still feels like everything around us is potentially starting to melt. We don't know the effects of it yet, because we're just the best. The hubris nature of us is that's it. We're just climbing up. And Bitcoin is confident as ever. It's continuing to just gobble up that price as best as we can. Now, I appreciate today maybe slightly different, and I plan these things before that happens, and it's just a classic eventuality of me just going live and the price doing the opposite of what I wanted to talk about. But on just a daily candle point of view, we've had a little bit of a pullback. Didn't really reset any of the major indicators, and then because the buying pressure's come back on, everyone's decided that it's bull season all over again. We need to go up. And what we could probably argue is that's not what we need it to be. So it's 83 there. We're on 81 here. It's ever so slightly different. If we start to look at some of these charts, and we've been, this chart here. Okay, that's fine. So we start to now to have a look at Bitcoin price, but putting on some of the other indicators. So we'll go with the classic RSI first, and I'll just put this up so we can kind of see it. So let's put this on the weekly. The weekly indicator for the RSI, it's still 84, incredibly high on the RSI. Nice little rhyme there, isn't it? And there's no real sign of necessarily cooling off. Now, I'll draw this down here. I'm not saying this is it, but some sort of trend line there. Potentially, we could be looking for an area to reset. But even if we were to drop down to that slowly over the next couple of months, that still takes us down to 60. Much better from a cooling off point of view. A sharper drop is going to take us into the 50s. I'll minimize this one. I won't close it down. And we just have a look at some of the other ones. Stochastic RSI now. So it's getting a bit messy, but I will. Why is that not? Okay, I've got to do it this way. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Okay. So with the stochastic RSI, again, what we had that meteoric rise up, cooling off a little bit as we went down through here, and then another large climb. And we're in the high 90s once again. Now, yeah, okay, we may have had the cross, but what we really want to see is these two, the blue and the orange cross, and then drop below the 80 before we can think there's a significant time for cooling off. So what we may end up having is it just sort of picking back up. And again, this is about momentum, isn't it? So bullish momentum remaining in the market, when actually what we really want to see is it cooling off, allowing time for us to reset, and then giving us that stable platform for which we can climb higher again. I just now move this one back down. And how I did that, I'll tell you what, let's just close it. I bought both of those, and we'll just go on to this. So what I've done now is we've got the fear and greed index, and we're going to try and have a look at where this sits. So again, remember that we're on the weekly, and we have sat above 75 since the 19th of February. So pretty much 5-6 weeks. And prices reflected that. Again, yes, we've had these spikes, but they've been bought up quickly. And okay, we dipped down. So that was it. So despite this is obviously slightly different because this one is saying, it's saying 75. That's the lowest we got to. 75, the height of this dip is where we got to when it got down to 61,000. But let's just have a look at why it's important that corrections settle those down. And I will go back to the RSI. It's just too complicated to have everything on the chart at the same time. But if we have a look at the more similar run up that we've had, so this parabolic run, not quite as steep, but certainly as impressive as this run we've had here. So this is back in August of 2020, after the halving, leading up into the original all-time high in April of 2021. And we've had a couple of pullbacks here. And the first one to note of is on the 4th of Jan, so just after New Year, we had that big pullback. And look, we went from 95 down to 67, an opportunity to cool off. We then climbed back up. We had that pullback again. And both, by the way, these were 25-30% pullbacks each time. And again, we went from 96 and we were able to cool back down to 54, which again, not only does it cool the fear and greed, but you can imagine that's cooling a lot of the other indicators it's providing us with a further platform for us to leap on. And we did. And okay, the fear and greed actually never got back higher because we only just peaked our head against where we previously were. People were foaming at the mouth thinking we were going to go higher, but we allowed ourselves that coolback. And then obviously we melted away and this thing went all the way down to fear. I mean, that's the irony of the fear and greed, isn't it? Because this went down to a 6 on the fear and greed at a price of 30,000. Yeah, when we breached 30,000 on this way up, sometime this week, we were sitting comfortably at 93. So a nice little 87 switch on that there. But you can kind of get the picture of where it happened. And then similarly, on the way back up to the November, we had that nice 30% pullback again. That pullback going from 71 all the way down to 25, giving us that catalyst and then go back up. And it's reflected on the other ones there. So for Bitcoin, the worry we have at the moment is without this, we're just going to keep on climbing. And ultimately what that then means is we'll stay too high for too long and then we will crash hard and stay hard, like what we've done in these mid-cycle sort of peaks between the previous two, which maybe for us is absolutely fine. But I suppose I want to raise another question before I move on to how we as traders might be looking a bit like Icarus at the moment. What is the problem? And this is a genuine question. What is the problem if we continue to rally up? And let's just say we blow through 75,000, 80,000, 100,000, and within the next 6 months, we hit 150,000. Where's the issue there? I mean, assuming that the rest of the crypto market generally moves with it, I'm not saying it outpaces Bitcoin or whatever, but let's just say we don't cool down, okay? We just keep on going. Every single indicator absolutely gets to heights that it can, high 90s, hundreds on the stochastic RSI, whatever it may be, and we get to that 150, 200,000, who cares? Altcoins do exactly what you expect them to do. Everything's exceeding your expectations. It's $12 trillion market cap. Polkadot's at $100, Near's at 50, Tau's at, 12,000, 13,000, whatever it may be. What's that going to do for us? Because a lot of the indicators will say we've blown too hot, too high, too fast. We've actually reached price targets that in our minds we would love to see, but the problem is the time of which they've happened is far too soon because we're still on the mindset that it's December 2025. And so what's going to happen? We're going to get complacent. We're going to be hubris. We're going to think we know more than the market does. And it'll hit 125,000, 150,000, 12 months prior to when we want it to, when we expect it to. And we won't do anything because we'll then be going 300K easily. I'll wait another 12 months and take the 300,000. And we're going to be left potentially flapping our arms around, realizing we don't have the wings to support us as the ground comes rushing towards us. And so I think the point I'm trying to make there from our point of view is if Bitcoin does keep on soaring higher and faster, we may just need to think about the speed of which it's happening and whether or not that is genuinely sustainable for 18 months without regular pullbacks. And if we're only getting, 18% every 3 months, the chances are we're going to hit a blow off top sooner than we think. And what I'd hate to see is for a lot of us here in September, October, November of 2024, yes, this year, sitting at targets that we would delighted to have seen if it was 2025. But because our exit plan says 2025, guys, I'm not getting out until then, we don't do anything with it. And then suddenly what we end up seeing is much like what we saw in this cycle, 50% corrections, nobody does anything, another 6 months before it recovers. Or worse still, it's like this cycle, it's an 85% correction, and we just start it again. Now, I'm obsessed at the moment with not saying it's going to happen that we're having a left-leaning cycle, but I'm spending as much time as I can to try and work out how I can determine whether that is going to be the case. And I think the real thing that's flummoxing, I think that's an ideal word to use, flummoxing. Don't think I've used that in about 40 years. A lot of people, myself included, is this is unlike any other cycle. We want it to be the 4-year cycle. Of course we do, because that's what we've known. That's what I believe in. And that's what I've been basing a lot of stuff off from, plans made 12 months ago or what have you. But we've reached an all-time high prior to the halving. We do have institutional inflows, and we've got more institutional inflows to come. Let's not beat around the bush. ETFs are one thing, but pension funds, family offices, whatever it is, they're going to come flooding in a few months' time. Yeah, maybe we're going to see some real sort of fireworks that will just catalyze that price up, and it's going to get to a point where it is too high for it to maintain. And I think we just got to be wary of that, but be ready for it and understand what that might mean in terms of our plans. One indicator that I have talked about, let me just find it. I'll just hide the fear and greed. A second, I'll pull that back down. So one that I started, putting on my charts in 2019, but then when it kicked off and happened in 2021, I went, I don't believe it. I believe myself better, is the pi cycle. And the pi cycle is something we've talked about quite a bit. And this is something, I recommend you just at least have it saved in your favorites on your indicator. And so when time is right, you can then just toggle it on, toggle it off to see where things are going. But what is interesting about the pi cycle is, bearing in mind, it was made here, that line. I mean, it's good a guess as any. So someone came up with it in 2029, okay? But looking back on previous cycles, it was able to pick the top plus or minus 3 days. I'll zoom in a second. Every other previous market high. For those of you that aren't aware of how the pi cycle works or what it necessarily is, you've got two indicators. You've got two EMAs. It's 111 and 365 off the top of my head. Work out what it is. 350 and 111. That's pretty close. And obviously one's fast, one's slow. And what they're saying is when the green and the orange cross, so the orange crosses over the green, that has in the past marked the cycle top within 2 or 3 days. So it was actually, there. Okay, and that was the actual top, I think, that day. This one here was there. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, 4 days. Stand corrected. Apologies. And then here, cross actually did happen on that one. That was a top. Okay, so it marked those retrospectively. So you could argue that is curve fitting or whatever you'd like to call it. So I thought, wow, brilliant. This is amazing. I'm gonna have this on my chart. And I did all the way through 2019. Loved it. Monitored it, saw it squeezing, breathing, whatever it was. And then, lo and behold, this happened. Bang. April 2021. We got to 64,000 and the cross happened. And I was like, I ain't taking any money out of the market. No chance whatsoever, because this thing's going to 7,500K. I know it is. But look what actually happened. It actually worked. Now that it was up there, it actually worked. It marked the April top, fell away. And then since then, it didn't come back for the November one. And I'm not going to bore everyone with my thoughts on whether or not the real top was in April, because I've already talked about it plenty of times before. But it did seem to work that time. So it's something that I'm going to use as an indicator, not as a, that's it, only the price cycles tell me one thing, so I'm going to do it. But it is something. But what I would suggest is, because of how steep this is going, these are starting to converge on each other now, quite aggressively. Okay? I don't know when that's going to be, because that will start going up. But it doesn't feel like these guys are going to wait another sort of 12 months afterwards, unless we have a sizable correction. And the correction does need to be sizable and sustained. That's the point. Can't just last for a day or two, because these indicators won't be able to take it in. If it's just a blip for a day, these things are 111 inputs and 350 inputs. You add just one to that, it's not going to deviate it. Okay? We need a sustained period where it can start to bulge out, and then what we might see is the orange go, well, maybe not like that, that's a bit too extreme. But as it's converging in, it might then start to bulge, and then this one will do that, and then they'll come together a little bit later on. Something like that, I don't know. And we saw that, we've seen that in previous cycles happens before. Where we've seen these dips come down and suddenly it gets wider again. Then it squeezes, then the dip comes down, it gets wider again. And it squeezes. And that's kind of what we need. Otherwise, this isn't the only indicator, but this may suggest, if this works, that we're going to get to that pinnacle point, that crossover point, a lot sooner than people expect. So definitely something to have a look at. Okay, let's have a look at some comments. One thing to note is that when gold had its parabolic rise in the 80s, when it crashed, it took 15 to 20 years to re-reach those highs. Well, I mean, a lot of people are arguing just how fast and how sped up Bitcoin has been, so yeah, okay, we've seen those rises, but typically these things have happened in the past very quickly. So I'm not sure if your point there is we're going to have to wait another 15 to 20 years. I'm sure it's not, because I know you know a lot about the crypto stuff. But what we're seeing here is these power, we've breached those highs and retained them within 3 years, 2 years of them happening. So Christopher, how do you remember that indicator? Harry, do you remember that indicator that someone used and worked last time, but no one else realized it? Psychic or what? Do I remember that indicator? Oh, right, okay. Price cycle, that's what you're talking about. There we go. What was the indicator called again, Harry? It was called the pi cycle. So if you go to indicators, there's a few. You just type in pi cycle and then top indicator. So Bitcoin top indicator. It's by Laser Ian Candle. It's got 2,707 people following it. And there's also the look into Bitcoin one. So I have both because I have access to looking into Bitcoin. And then there are people that have bottom indicators as well. Now, I don't think these have worked as well, but let's just throw one on and have a look, shall we? Let's see. Let's just get rid of the... See, this one didn't really catch the bottom. Pi cycle bottom was here, it says, but actually, I mean, it was 18,000, and we went down to 2, so not quite same here. This one actually did catch it to the day. 3,100. So Bitcoin bottom here. This one was to the day as well. I bet it doesn't have the same settings. Now you see, look at this. It's 471 versus 150. But it didn't quite catch it after it had been invented. It didn't quite catch it this time. There was still one more twist in the tail. That was Sam Bankman-Fried to take it a little bit lower. But yeah, I think going back to the whole point of it, as exciting as it is, Bitcoin's going up. We are either going to just burn out very quickly. We'll still get to levels that we want to get to, but we just need to change our exit idea. And that's fine, because we're in it, most of us, for the money, not the tech. So that's fine. We just need to realign how we're going to exit and when we're going to exit. Or we're going to have that lengthy correction or multiple corrections, giving us those cool off periods so that we can last before getting into the back end of 2025. For me, it doesn't necessarily matter as long as the price gets to where it gets to. We've just got to be of the mindset of, if it does happen a lot faster, not to get complacent, not to get cocky thinking this thing can go to 1 million this cycle, but actually to think this is a high level of number. This is something I'd be very happy with in 12 months' time, maybe to take something off the table. I suppose that's all I'm trying to mention there. No, my point is it could be long wait if it gets suppressed like gold. I don't know if it's going to get suppressed by gold, because I'm not particularly a gold trader, and I've not really followed the history of gold, but from what I understand, there's a lot of paper trading of gold, which has helped to suppress the price, isn't it? There's only a finite amount of Bitcoin, and I truly believe that, trust me, there is some exchanges that are paper trading this bad boy, because I bet if we added up all of the Bitcoins that are on every single exchange, it wouldn't be around about 2 million. It'd probably be about 3 or 4. So I'm sure there is some paper trading, but I think what could happen is if the institutions do continue to hoover it up like they are hoovering it up, then they may be able to control that price, because there's just not enough of it floating around for everyone to sell. And if they're not in the mood for selling, or if they are in the mood for selling, we could see that it's not as decentralized as what we may have hoped. But that's a whole nother story about how we're going to exit. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago about me wanting to have some BTC regardless of where we get to. Okay, 488, back to the early talk on hardware wallets. Is it possible to link a hardware to Tower wallet? Not that I'm aware of at the moment. So if you remember with the Nova kind of stuff, what we were recommending is finding or buying, an old, relatively new, but not one you're using, smartphone, especially something that either does facial recognition or fingerprint analysis. And then you almost treat it as that. So it's not something you take out with you. It's just something that you just leave cold and off and in a drawer, locked away, wherever it is. And then whenever you want to do something with it, you have to physically turn that phone on. You have to physically be there to put your thumbprint in, and then you can move it that way. It isn't foolproof, but nothing ever is. But it is at the moment the best we can do. And we'll just have to wait and see as these projects, especially newer ones, start to develop. Maybe we'll get some opportunity for them to be introduced into hardware wallets. But no, unfortunately not. Okay. I'll come back to some other Bitcoin stuff a little bit later on. I think what we'll do is we will move on to get through a couple of other questions, if you don't mind, and if you'll indulge me on that. I can find where I did it. Here we go. Okay. Right. Okay. John's asked, can you demonstrate how the second tab of your portfolio spreadsheet works? I assume that's what you meant. So, since the portfolio spreadsheet, just to let you know, it is having another round of updates, just because I haven't got something that drags the price through. So I have to update the prices, and then I have to kind of tweak expected dominance and growth and all that kind of stuff. But as you can see, I'm almost finished it. It's not particularly hard. It's just laborious. But you're talking about the second page. This is just narrative and sentiment. To be honest with you, the second page is almost irrelevant. All that stuff was on the first page. Because I was using it, I just moved it over there. But if you go onto the portal, you go to the Avengers videos, there's actually a video about this, and it's about half an hour long video, and it's about 10 minutes that go through how I've determined where the sentiment lies. And this is completely subjective, and you may have a completely different stance on things to I do, so that's fine. But these are like snapshots. What I've done is I've gone through, there was CoinGecko did a report at the end of 2023 talking about the crypto space, and one of the sections in there is top narratives going forward, and I was able to use stuff like that, but also having just a think about what I see as like key objectives, and then I would be able to score it. So from a subjective point of view, it's memeability. And what I mean by that is it's not that it's a meme coin, but what is it that's going to make it go viral? Okay, what is the narrative? What narrative is it trying to fit? Is it AI, GameFi, whatever? Market penetration. So how far has it already got within that market? Is it a particularly heavy market that it's trying to penetrate within to, or is it something completely new? Big news announcements around it, roadmaps, socials, network use, TVLA, future demand, tokenomics, and team. So from that, it is subjective because it's my opinion on a lot of those. But ultimately, what I'm looking for is something that is viable, memeable. It is in a strong narrative, and you can see my view on the narrative tracker a little bit over there. It is in a good sector. It's got some great tokenomics. Its roadmap is good. And what I mean necessarily by the roadmap is it's actually delivering something this cycle. Like, it's no point, as good as a project may be, if its roadmap says that, this is a layer one project and its roadmap says will be complete and rolling out our mainnet in 2027, as good as that can be, it's got nothing for people to get behind this section. And which is why, for me, real world assets are not as strong as a lot of other people are putting them in. Real world assets for a lot of people, one of the biggest narratives for this bull run. Whereas I think a lot of these real world asset projects, they're not there yet. It's all about what they want to do. It's not like they have those assets in their back pocket that they have already tokenized. And without that, it's very hard for people to get on board with it in a massive, memeable, viral kind of way. So that's an example there. And then objective things where we can just have a look. So the objective stuff is what you see here. It is the price. It is what the dominance is. It's how they've done previously. It's all of that kind of stuff. And that's just sort of how it kind of kicks it off. Now, the subjective bit is this bit. So this is what I talk about. So that expected growth, the X, that's my opinion on what X it can do. There's none that are super crazy. And there's any above 10 or anything like that. But yeah, it's just my opinion on that. I'd recommend watching the video. It's on there. And I think I can probably have this sheet complete, by tomorrow, because there's not many more to go. I think I probably need to add some because someone did send me a few, so maybe a little bit longer. But yeah, and what is interesting, just whilst we're on this, is the first time I updated this or did this was middle of February. So in that month, you'd be surprised at the amount of altcoins that have actually gone down in price, not up. So Bitcoin's gone up, Ethereum's gone up, Binance Coin's gone up, and Solana's gone up. But a lot of the other ones are either where they were 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, or they've actually gone down. So that opportunity for buying is still there. What was good in February is still good now. And a lot of them, the multiple sides of things down here, still there. Some pretty decent multiples. We're kind of looking for 10 plus, really, depending on where you got in, because this price is ever changing. Anyway, next question. Will you be able to share your process for choosing meme coins to invest in and timing your entry and exit? Well, again, we actually spoke about this quite a bit in Discord. So if you go into crypto stuff, and Alan Crypto Wonder and I've been having quite a few discussions on this. So you only have to go back to yesterday where we sort of talk about it, and I kind of explain what I do and how I do it. I don't particularly think there is a huge science, but I know a lot of videos on YouTube suggest that there is. But I ask you, are they just trying to make a video, or are they generally working? Because the videos that I've seen, it's not them that have done the 1000x, the 15,000x, whatever. It's always someone else. And so I think it's not like they know necessarily how to do it and they've done it themselves. There is the odd people, which I'll give some props to, that do manage to do it. But ultimately for me, it's trying to find something that you believe someone else will want to speculate on later. So like we've got a presidential election. If there's some Trump or Biden related tokens that are on a Solana or maybe the base network, which is sort of coming along from memes at the moment, that have some sort of meme ability, some sort of following on social media, you may be able to get in now. It's a longer hold because elections are in November, but then we'll likely see some sort of pump towards those elections. I know things like bit dark, but P Diddy, there's some tokens that have launched in the last 24 hours on him that have done 4,000x because of the news events that have gone on. I dare say if we went on to Deck Screener, there'll probably be some on the Baltimore Bridge and stuff like that. So some of those you just can't know is going to happen until they happen. But read through this. It gives you my view on it. I'm by no means an expert. I've done well a couple of times. I've done mediocre more times. And I've done badly a few times. I've had a rug. It's part and parcel, unfortunately, for it. Erect Fencer, he's the one that actually has done well, to be fair to him. But I'll let you check that one out, John. Welcome any comments anyone else has on that. Rogers puts, what do you think about TauBank.ai lending that for borrowing against wrapped Tau on the Arbitrum One network? Is it safe to use to lever up our Tau holdings? A fantastic question, and one that I have a very interesting view on. I will never, I'll be honest, do anything like this. I'm not interested in using Aave for it or anything like that personally, because I just burnt, I think, on DeFi in 2021, 2022. And the risk with DeFi is there are just so many bad apples. And for me, I will go through TauBank in a second, but for me, you know, Tau's one of my golden eggs, if you will. So I just don't really want to risk the golden egg, an egg which, you know, could arguably do a 20x anyway, maybe a 40x, 50x, maybe hell, if we get to 22,000 and some of you got in at $200, 100x. So I just think, do I need to go any more degen than getting a 30, 40, 50, 100x on something? Probably not for me, and certainly not necessarily worth the risk. I've never heard of TauBank before, but I thought you've asked about it, so I will check it out. So here's the website for anyone that's never seen it before. TauBank, unleashing liquidity for Tau. Fairly plain website, not necessarily too much to it. And you know, normally what I'd like to this go to app, I'd like to kind of see that up there, get people, it's there. Sorry, to pop up. Take it all back. You can have a look at the documentation. And Roger, for me, the biggest thing that I would want to understand is, where's it being held? Who's in charge of the vaults of it being held? And what am I getting for it? And how quickly can I get out of it? Because ultimately, that, you know, they're the things that are going to trip you up, particularly the vault. That sounds secure because it's got the word vault, but for all I know, this could just be, it gets stored on one guy's, well, we know it's not going to be on a hardware wallet because you can't do that with Tau. So, yeah, just be careful of that. Now, of TauBank itself, it is a relatively new project. I think it is the Twitter for it. Now, it says joined in September 2022. However, just be careful of that. This was obviously an old account, because when you go down to the very bottom of it, the first thing that's come out is it actually did launch end of January, beginning of February. So this is very new. So I've never heard of TauBank, but it kind of feels like whoever they are, they have seen how popular and how successful Tau's become. And lo and behold, when Tau finally got corrected on CoinMarketCap and jumped from 400 to 30, we suddenly get the opportunity to leverage our Tau and, you know, loan it out to take some more. So I'm already skeptical. I was skeptical even if this was the most sincere project ever, because I just don't like that kind of thing. I tried going on Social Blade to see, you know, how many followers they've got, because they've got 3,900, but did they have 3,900 when it was the old account? And nobody's bothered joining this. But unfortunately, nobody's bothered checking up on TauBank before on Social Blade. So they will only start tracking that information probably, or certainly within the last 30 days. So we can't actually see, unfortunately. But you can, you know, go and check all that kind of stuff out. But what I did do, because, you know, I'm trying to make sure that I give you a thorough answer, is I thought, well, I'm a member of the Discord, so I'll go on. So I went on to BitTensors, and I had a lovely chat with Kat, BitTensor CM, who basically said she'd never heard of it. It isn't affiliated with Tau in any way, shape, or form. And if you still want to find out anything about it, go and speak to people in the Tau community, because maybe they've heard of it. So I thought, great idea, I'll go and do that. So I went to the Tau community, and someone had already asked today about TauBank, and unfortunately they've deleted their post. But somewhere in here, so these were people responded to, never heard of them. They probably made a few and will continue to drain liquidity from people trying to play the pump and dumps. They have nothing to do with BitTensor, and these aren't just like average people. You know, if you look on this is an admin for the Tau community. They're part of BitTensor Guru's podcast, TauBridge, you know, Tensor Wallets. They are very heavily involved, and they are saying that Tau Bank has nothing to do with it. So another red flag for me there. I think that's a long way of saying I'm not going to personally touch it. I question, Roger, whether the risk to reward is really worth it. It may be the most secure thing in the world. So if it is something you're going to do, just do me a favor, just for me. Don't put everything into it, okay? Just Do a little bit. You don't need to be a degen on 100% of your TAO portfolio. If you want to scratch that itch, just do it with a small percentage of it. Okay. Do you feel it is a good time at current levels to rotate from CAS to TAO? So let's pretend that today's correction didn't happen. And we did have that rally up, didn't we? And then we had that correction back down. And it is sitting on a level where you may think you'd want to move within there. This is the TAO CAS chart. And I know it's obviously, but what I would say at the moment is it's still holding below this 50 EMA. And you know, we had this conversation last Thursday that there may be 30 people, 200 people in the world looking at this chart, but for some reason these patterns still play out because TAO against USDT makes its own TA, and so does CAS. But for me, this is sitting below the 50 EMA on the 12-hour, and it's closed below there a few times. So I wouldn't want to swap over until I knew that it broke that. Yes, you may miss out on a little bit, but this could quite easily just bounce off this and then just continue falling. So I'd necessarily hold out on that. You're then going to ask to say, can you use a couple of RT plays, TAO, CAS, and Cubic, to do a quick walkthrough of how you take profit levels, fib levels, and otherwise? I don't know if you, Dan, asked me this previously, but so yeah, I have a whole profit taking section here, which I did post in Discord, but that channel got deleted, so unfortunately they are no more. But there are a few within here. So there's some I've already done, and then there's some I'll try and do now. And now I like to use the fib levels, and with that I use fib levels and previous price history to try and identify levels that work. Obviously with BTC, I wasn't necessarily looking at it, but I did take some profit just under 50,000. What was it? 50,000. So it was here, which I thought was a good level to swap in, bearing in mind that my average buy for BTC is 23,000, and I moved those into other assets. So yeah, okay, could have sat on it. It's not sat in cash though, so I don't feel like I've lost out. I just wanted to move into other things. The Polkadot one, all I've done again, as you'll see, and this one has been stood here for a while. So I've got my average entry at $3.96, and I've just drawn fib from top to bottom, and then I've identified levels, and there's some narrative to each side as to why I've chosen that. So 20% at 5x gives me 100% of it being removed. And then obviously there's other ones here, and I know what people are going to say. Harry, if you're confident it's going to get back to all-time highs, why not just leave it all in? Well, two reasons. One, because this is kind of like my full-time job, so at some stage I do like to pay myself. And two, just like what we saw with NEAR, perfect opportunity for me to take profit. Okay, I moved it into BTC, but actually I resold that BTC and I bought NEAR, so I now have more NEAR, and it was a perfect example of it hitting a take profit zone. You know, it wasn't like I was taking it all the way back to the bank, and I might not do that with DOT either. But I certainly want to have something that I can either reinvest it elsewhere, or maybe if there's a pullback, have it do that. And so that's why these targets are there. Here's Link. We don't talk about that one because I sold it, so I was just being stupid. But again, that would have been perfect examples of areas to take profits, see it bounce back, take more profits. You know, it would have worked. Right, so I won't necessarily go through those because we've done those. Some of these, when you post, like, because I do these on the linear chart, because of Glimmer flying all the way up to $20 on the day it launched, it just doesn't sit right. So with this one, I just tell myself to knock it onto a logarithmic chart, and then it's there, and there are the targets. And again, you know, I have changed this, and this is on a weekly rather than a daily. But I have changed this so that I've not included the time it peaked up to $20 or whatever. It's like I've kind of taken its all-time high around that $4.60 and then dragged it down to where it is. And I suggest you all, you know, just these are made in sand. They will alter and they will change as the market does, but they don't always follow the same ones because I'm wanting to get certain returns, and sometimes I don't get as good of entries as I would like. So if we have a look at Rose, for example, then. And I'll try and do this quickly. So my average buy at the moment sits at basically 5 cents, just under. So what were you going to do? Well, this has had a bull market previously. So because it's had a bull market, I can take a high level. So I'm just grabbing a fib, dragging it down to wherever the lows are. Okay, and that's it. I'm not trying to fit this. It's just top to bottom, and then what B will be. I like go body to body. If you want to do wick to wick, knock yourself out. And then I can see where my entry sits with from the low. And thankfully, because I've been buying this one throughout 2022, 2023, I'm fairly close to the bottom, and it's actually had a fairly good run up. So now what I'm looking for is previous price action. Where is it that I can make the best returns? Well, as you already know, the first time I want to take profit is at kind of a 5x, because then it's 5x. I could take 20% out, and there's 100%. So actually, I haven't come across an opportunity to do it yet. And really what I'm looking for is somewhere above 20. Well, lo and behold, the 618, the absolute golden ratio that I love, is sitting around about 20 cents. Okay, it's a little bit low. So then we go, okay, well, what is in and around that area for previous price action? And I think there is a nice level here. It's going to be, I've really drawn that poorly, somewhere around about here. So just above the 618. And then it's around about 20 to 22 cents. And we can kind of see nice little bit of support back in March 22. Remember, there's a weekly candles, loads of chop in and around here. And even in this pump up here, there's a decent bit. Now, you might say, well, Harry, it might hit the 618 and go all the way through. And so, yeah, okay, maybe we want to pull this down to the top side of the 618. We start to just phase out from 18 cents. Now, I prefer to wait till it gets to above 20, because even at 20, I'm actually only getting around about 4x. But I don't want to necessarily be greedy. And typically, I always do like to take 20. So I would just, so this is definitely getting a bit John now. So I'd say TP 1, 20%. And that's it. And, as I say, might not go back to the bank, but it might. And then ultimately, I'll be looking at what's the next. Well, I'm not a huge fan of the 786. Do you know what I've just realized? This on the log. Let's put this back down on the linear. There we go. I knew there was something wrong with that one there. Okay, let's try this one again, shall we? See, there we go. I should have drawn it out earlier instead of should have done a blue Peter on it. Let's just start that one again. Leave that there. So top to bottom, that's looking a little bit better now. The price action is below 382. Still got all the same price actions there. It's just looking a lot better. And then I'll be looking again at another one at the 618. I'm not going to draw this somewhere in around that. Now, I like those, but I still like to take profit. So for me, I would probably be looking at maybe just 10% here. TP2. Okay. And then we go from there. I kind of like all-time high, so I'd probably look at maybe another 10% there. And really what I'd want to see, though, is how this works then between the 618 and the 382 and the 5. See whether or not I can re-enter some. But ideally from the take profit one, I kind of do want to pay myself, I'll be honest. And a lot of these at the moment are looking good. Whether it is Polkadot, working its way up right nicely at the moment. And look where Polkadot is sitting. For me, at the moment, Polkadot's sitting at a fantastic level. Just previous support and resistance, support and resistance, support and resistance. And so we can get a nice kick off this, lean into there, then we can go. Now, I've actually unstaked 50% of my Polkadots. I've got to wait the 28 days. Got 24 days to go. So that I can just move that across somewhere else, restake it, which it didn't have. I won't get as big of rewards, but I can get it out sooner. So that post is in because I'm hoping in the next couple of months we will get up to $20, and I don't want to then have to wait to take it out. Now, Casper, because that's the one you asked for. I can't do the method that I chose really using Casper because we haven't had a previous bull market, and so what do I do with the fib? I look at extensions. I don't know. Doesn't seem to go very high either. And so I don't have a plan for Casper. Now, I'm not really sat in much Casper, having sold mine a couple of days ago. And it's always a short-term play for me. So I'm not really feeling this one. And it doesn't always work. So I'm going to have to come up with another level for where I can see Casper. And, you know, we go back to this and Casper. And what do I think? You know, maybe we get to just around about $2. Okay, that'd be at its biggest. It'd be, you know, somewhere between $120 billion market cap, on average around about $51 billion. That's still like a 14x from where we currently are. So maybe something like that is what I'm going to have to use as a bit of a guide. I've lost where I was now. Nope. But Fet's an interesting one. So Fetch is... Fetch just stings. Look at that. Right, so top to bottom, because it has had a previous bull market. Okay. And look at these. It just loved to work it. And now this is what hurts. And this is why you won't always win. I did a video for RT on it there. Bought some for a little bit, rode the... Actually, it was actually earlier here, wasn't it? Because we rode the AI hype up. And then I was looking at it here. And if you remember, I was like, guys, it's just gone into administration in the UK. It shouldn't be anything. I'm going to wait and see just to make sure the dust settles. The dust did not settle, so it's flown up. I have actually started to buy into Fetch, and my average buy is around about $2.20. Oh, it stings, but it is. So what can I do here? Again, I'm kind of trapped into what I can do. The only other thing we might be able to do, and I haven't done this, I need to have a look at it. Maybe I can throw a few extra ones on. Let's just throw these all on. See what mess this makes to the chart. Yeah, so we've got like the 3-618 and the 2-618 and the 4-618. Okay, there's some levels there that it's currently interacting on, but you know, we just start to take the mick now. It's not really getting that much higher than what it is. So again, with stuff that's already so badly destroyed its previous all-time high, using the fib retracements and extensions is not necessarily going to work. So I'm going to have to go again. What we see here, Fetch AI currently at just under $3, might get to 38 according to this. Again, there's no guarantee that this is right, but the market cap, an estimated average market cap of around about 44 billion. AI project, 44 billion doesn't seem too far away, especially as it's currently sitting at around about 2.5 billion. So yeah, and an overall market cap of only 0.5%. I don't think that's too much to ask for Fetch in this market. So I will, straight after this call, post all of those in Discord, except for the ones that didn't work, obviously. I was going to do H-bar. I'll do this quickly because I'm actually thinking about selling my H-bar. I've already taken 50% off the table when it got back up to here. But I'm just not that excited about it. And I'm at a point now where I don't have too much spare cash. So I'm having to think about taking profit to put stuff in. So there's this level here, but because my entry is at 7.5 cents, I have to get, you know, to hit my target 37 cents just to get to 5x, which is kind of near all-time high levels. And I'm like, could I be better spent putting this money somewhere else that hasn't popped like that? So I probably will get rid of H-bar and help manage it. I'm not following it as clean as I was a few months ago. So we shall see on that one. Anyway, back to the questions. I'm overrunning here. Could you cover the security risk with the MacBook? Someone posted in Discord. Someone said MacBooks are now hackable. I cannot cover that because one, I don't own a Mac. Two, I don't know. But what I did do for you, John, is in that I followed up on Colt's post and I put the article within there. So, you know, feel free to read that. I don't know anything about microchips and I don't use a MacBook, so I don't really understand it myself. But if you do have one you are worried, definitely, you know, you need to be looking into it, or get yourself a crypto laptop. And if that is your crypto laptop, then I appreciate you probably want to have a look. This is the article here. Again, I was going to read it out on stream, but it doesn't really make any sense to me. But certainly have a look at it. And I'm sure you can go on some YouTube, and someone who does know about this will have probably done a video that will explain it a little bit better. Andrew, based AI is getting some hype. Some stating it's better than Tau. Is it worth a look? And I've actually seen that Crypto Wonder has asked if I've had a chance to look at based AI. I'll tell you, I've done one better. Actually bought based AI. Now, research token, this is something that I'm going to sort of get my head around because it is quite complicated and I want to spend some time talking about it. But I did get put onto it. I kind of liked what I saw. There's some significant links with based AI. So I don't want to ruin the video, but there's some ties between based AI and the original developers of the original Pepe meme coin, the one that Pepe coin that came out God knows how long ago. So they've got some pretty significant OGs within there, and obviously some very intelligent people. The similarities, so obviously it's an AI related project, and overarchingly they kind of do the same thing. And then whereas Tau has subnets, based AI has brains, they're called. Now it has like 1064 brains already, which obviously could do little functions like what the I say little functions, sub functions like what the subnets do. But I haven't researched it enough to know whether or not it is like Tau, if it's better than Tau, and so because it's quite complicated, I didn't want to necessarily rush into it. So it's in my token research thing, which hopefully I'll try and update on a little bit next week. Just for those of you that are wondering what it is, it's frozen perfectly, so you can't actually see. I promise you that's my internet, not the quality of this. But if you go on Dex Tools, based AI, it's only available on Uniswap at the moment. But yeah, it has had a fairly decent run. 2024 is at 25 cents, climbing up. A lot of people are saying this was like if you could buy Tau at $25. So I kind of sort of liked initially what I read, so I bought a decent amount of it, and it's thankfully has gone up. If I get put off by what I read over the next week, then I might sell it. But a lot of people are talking about it, and it does seem to get some positive vibes. So see where that goes. But I will do a better video and in-depth analysis on it as soon as I understand it. Kevin's put, Harry, I'm curious about your Tau staking results with Avengers. They claim to offer 28.83% 7-day APY. Have you had a chance to work it out, and what do you actually get for them? So, cards on the table, I'm not following it as closely as I should, but also I've got my pot split at the moment, which isn't helping because I'm waiting to the end of the month so I can get my bump from having it with First Tensor and be there for the the full month, and then everything will go over to our Ventures. However, speaking with people in the community, and they've been kind enough to share their figures with me, it does look like they are getting on a 7-day return, or I think it was actually a 24-hour return, around about 21% when you calculate it there. But then when you take into effect the compound nature of that over the full 365 days, that would likely increase to around about the 28% that they are claiming. So it does seem to be tallying up, kind of. But you got to remember, if they're saying 29% APY, that's assuming that you are compounding it day on day throughout the full 365 days. So if your calculations are slightly off, you aren't taking into account the compound. You likely are not taking into effect or into consideration the compounding nature of it. So I hope that one helps. And then Kevin's had, following on from the previous question, how safe is it to use a smaller validator like Owl Ventures? My concern is that if they are removed from the validator list on Tau stats, then it would be impossible to unstake from them, and the staked Tau would then effectively be frozen, and you could not do anything with it. Could this happen? I can't say hand on heart that it can't happen. However, they are verified by Tau Stats. So why don't we just do a bit of research? And, this is kind of what I do. So go on to Tau Stats. We can see our Ventures are there. They are verified. They currently have 87,000 Tau staked. So no, by no means small. It's 1.5% of the entire network. So yeah, okay, they're not as big as Open Tensor and First Tensor and a few of the other ones, but they have a sizable amount. But that is not always enough, and we should do our research. So obviously you can jump into Discord and you can ask away and speak to people, and I tell you, I like asking questions here because, well, I have seen some people ask the same question and get told off, but generally everyone in there is very helpful and will always jump out. So ask away about Owl Ventures and any concerns with what the process is if someone is being removed off the verified list, and how you can stake, because I'm sure they'll come up with an answer for you. But we can do a little bit of diving in about Owl Tensor. So not on this list, which is interesting, but this, I don't know if it's just because it's an old list, it's not updated, because there's quite a lot missing. This has got like the real top ones, but it's a shame they're not on it, because there's a staking calculator here, So this is BitTensor staking. And if they were on it, you could put them in and then you could say how many you've got. So let's say we've got 50 and with BitTensor Guru, it's 17%. That's what you get monthly, that's what you get yearly. Yeah. Okay. So it's a shame they're not there, because then that would have helped us answer the previous question about how much we're necessarily getting. But when you go on here, they've got a Twitter and a website. So we click on Twitter, Our Ventures, there they are, Our Ventures, strategic angel investing in early stage blockchain and Web3 projects. So they're not just a TAO validator. They obviously invest in other companies. Now you can take that as a good thing or a bad thing. You can click on their website, which I've actually already done. And these are all the projects that they have angel invested in. So BitTensor's there. Entangled, which is one that I'm involved in as well, is there, which is good to see. I didn't know that until I was looking at this. BRC20 is there. They've obviously got some exposure within DeFi and DAOs. And then the gaming side, Rebase, is another good one. But this website's pretty vague. That's it. You know, you can just click on these now and it just takes you to another website. So to be honest with you, the website is a little off-putting because I'd prefer it to have a bit more information. But what you can then do is start to research people in it. So I don't know how I ended up here, but I did. I went from Our Ventures and I scrolled down and I was like, Ollie White. Okay. He's been invited by Coinbase to go and have a look on some UK panel. Why is he posting that? And why have Our Ventures reposted it? Well, it turns out Ollie White, who has 1 million followers, by the way, is the co-founder of Our Ventures. So he has 1 million followers on Twitter, has 2.58 million followers or subscribers on YouTube. Yeah, that's just that website again. But again, I was like, that's fine. He says that he's a content creator and he's co-founder of Our Ventures. But again, might not provide me with anything. I tried to actually look through some of his videos, but he's not posting much at the moment. Hopefully, because he's too busy working on crypto. So YouTube-wise, he is, very slow to post. So it's like 3 months ago, then gap of 2 months. Yeah, so not much. They seem to be more vlogs than anything else. But he is active on Twitter. Have I lost his Twitter account? Here it is. And he talks about a lot of things, but he's posting a lot about crypto, not just about Tao, I should add, but there definitely is stuff on Tao and you can go through. So at least we know that he is active in the crypto space. And I thought, well, I'll check on LinkedIn because I actually tried to find him on Our Venture on Company's House, but I couldn't. But he's there on LinkedIn and he's also co-founder of Owl Productions. So I was like, well, okay, Owl Productions is based in the UK and lo and behold, here it is. And here he is. So he is registered with Company's House for that one. It doesn't mean that Owl Ventures is any less dodgy, but at least we can follow him this way. And I can have a look at what he's done there. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Owl Ventures is registered in the United Kingdom. So I was like, okay, that's a bit strange because this guy's based in the UK. So why is that? So if I go back to LinkedIn, I see that his partner and the other co-founder is Gareth Finney, and he's based in Dubai. So that might be the reason why. That he is based in Dubai and it's been set up in Dubai. What I can see by going on things like PitchBook, and I haven't paid for this service, but you can see that it is an angel group. They do exist, although it does say UK here, which is interesting. The website's all linked and it kind of talks about things that they have invested within in the past. Okay, we're starting to form at least some trail that Owl Ventures is a company of some sort. That may not give you any confidence, Kevin, whatsoever, and they may be too small and just be trying to get out and take your money. There's always going to be an element of risk within these, but then I just ultimately go back to the fact, I'm going to do it, that they are on this list and they have been verified by BitTensor themselves, and I'm sure as hell that they will have done a far more due diligence than my 5-minute research search into them. So I'm going to use them just because at the moment they are apparently providing the best APY. If that changes and it's someone else, I'll chop and change because it's pretty easy to unstake. But this goes back to, if you're in BitTensor and you're not doing 10 minutes of research a day, then I got to question your commitment because anything can change, and anything could change like Owl Ventures suddenly not a validator anymore or whatever, or they're getting warnings to tell that they're not doing a great job or they're not passing on the rewards as they should be or whatever. That should be part of your research cycle. If you're putting 100% of your Tao into someone to trust and you're not checking on it every day, for some people that's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth, then I got to question, you know, where that sensibility lies, especially if something bad does go wrong. You arguably could be to blame for, you know, not keeping tabs on stuff. So yeah, that's where we are with that. But I think that was the last question, which it was. Okay, we got 10 minutes left. Alan, you did. I think that's what put me in the direction of based AI, to be honest. So thank you for putting that within there. I don't think I missed any other questions there. Right, let's just go back to having a look at a couple of other charts and we'll also see what the price of Bitcoin's done whilst I've been rabbiting on for a few minutes. Not really too much. So we are getting close towards the end of the month. The end of the month's actually going to happen on Monday, which is Easter Monday. Now, last week, this candle was down here at 61,000, and I was like, ooh, closes like that. That is a nice candle on the monthly. But right now, it's looking pretty healthy, you know, nice. It's not necessarily an engulfing candle, but that, if it stays kind of where it is, the whole body of that candle is above the all-time high, previous all-time high from November 21. So yeah, some good strength within that. Dropping it back down on some of the lower time frames. We've kind of talked about this. I mean, I just want to put this on here because it's on the 12. Sorry, it's not the 12. This is on the 12. I think. And actually, when you look at it on the 12-hour, it's had a fairly nice reset, 50 EMA, and you know it's arguable that maybe we have, and they go back to that poll about, you know, is 18% enough? 60% of you effectively say no, and I agree. If that's the only thing we're getting, it's not going to be enough. This thing's going to be over before we know it. But this pullback, is it enough to give us a bit of respite? Potentially. What I would like us to see, honestly, what I'd like us to see now is just to meander. You know, that's the best we're going to get, is just to meander here for a few weeks, okay? Let everything cool down a little bit and soften off. And that's one, you know, perfect range for market makers to manipulate as they need to, $10,000 range. But it also gives enough to just sort of steady everyone back down and reset some of those nerves, I suppose. Or excitement, sorry. But if we look at Bitcoin dominance, it's not something we talk about that often on here. But what I am actually surprised is how well Bitcoin dominance has fared up, because price action over the last, I'm on the 12 hours, let's put it back onto the daily. Over the last week has obviously dropped from 74,000 down to 61,000. Now, over that same period, it's gone from 54, it dropped straight down, and then all it's done, whilst Bitcoin kept on sliding in price, it's kind of ranged between 53.3 and 53.8, which I know sounds like only 0.4%, that's not much, but for dominance, trust me, that's quite a significant amount. And I think that's showing surprising strength for Bitcoin, because normally when the price falls away, we either see that it goes higher because altcoins are falling further, or we actually see that it drops away because altcoins taking up the slack. Well, actually, what's happened here is Bitcoin's been able to keep its level of dominance, building some sort of support there, and ultimately, maybe actually giving us a bit of a leg up for a Bitcoin move to take us back up. Maybe smash through that all-time high of 73,000, whatever it is, making that move closer to 80,000, and we start the next run up before we get a correction, and we just effectively have to limp on with that 18% correction, and hopefully we'll find a further one. But we're getting, you know, a matter of weeks now, less than a month to the halving. That hype's starting going to get around it, and maybe there is that start and that move to go up. And if we want to have a look at some of the other charts, we look at things like around here. This is total market cap. Again, pullback down to the 21 EMA, and then it's bounced off it quite nicely. It almost got down to the 50, to be fair to it. If we had the clouds on this, it would have been within inside the 50 cloud. And so maybe it has had that reset that we've been asking for. And now it's just going to move back up. And you know, if that's the case, we don't want to be waiting another 8 weeks. We want to get another one. If all we're going to get each time is 15 to 20%, we need to have more of them. We're going to sustain and limp on through. But likewise, if we go to Bitcoin 2, so Bitcoin 2, remember for everyone, is everything in the crypto space except for Bitcoin. Sorry, total 2, everything in space for Bitcoin. And so Ethereum obviously has done well recently, going from like 2,000 to 4,000. Obviously, it's settled back down. But actually, should I be on the weekly here? Can I see? What is this? There we go. Let me get on the weekly. It's ugly there. Zoom it back out. You know, we're running into a bit of resistance at the moment around about here. So that resistance is that move back down, which obviously this is total 2, which then leaves Bitcoin the opportunity for its dominance to shoot back up. But again, you know, that's not too difficult a level to get through. And okay, it's on the weekly, so we don't have too much. But if I put that back on the daily, it's an all right level of support that we've kind of just built up on there. Now, I was watching someone else do a YouTube show today, and they did, I've never used this chart before, but they did Bitcoin 2 versus BTC. So having a look at where that is, and actually, so obviously Bitcoin has increased versus the rest of the market, so it's starting to come back down here. But again, we're now starting to see a potential shelf here. And are we bouncing off that quite nicely, which is the opposite of what I've been talking about, because suddenly we might be talking about an opportunity for an alt season. But if we do see Bitcoin dominance, then we're going to see that head back down that way. So there's a couple of things to look at. And the final thing I want to just sort of pass on to you is just this. The alt season index, and we have rapidly cooled off. And it goes back to when I was updating the charts inside the spreadsheet. I'm surprised at the amount of altcoins that had actually reduced in value over the last 7 weeks. And you can see that, you know, the alt season, we were flying with alts at 84%. We popped down and then we shot straight back up to 75, confirmed into an alt season. But now we're right smack in the middle, 50. We are neutral as it can be, really cooling off from the alt season, which unfortunately is why I had to draw 2 arrows there, because we're so neutral right now. Yes, maybe alts do fly up, or BTC. I really need to get a pen. And because we're sitting right smack in the middle of it, we're not necessarily too sure. For me, I'd probably favor this right now. I think the narrative around the halving, people starting to buy back with the ETFs, I think we can potentially see Bitcoin making that first move. Alts will still rise, but maybe they just don't rise as fast, and we start to see that climbing the dominance. And then after the halving, we hopefully get back on track. We start to see the 4-year cycle kind of things. We start to see that cool off. But unfortunately, we are just stuck in a position where, you may know, I personally can't guarantee where I'm going. So I'm just trying to evaluate both sides of things and just being ready. I am 90% in the market at the moment, so I don't really have much spare capital on the sideline, which is why I'm looking to sell projects at the moment to maybe buy into either existing projects I have or new ones that are coming about. The only other boring bit of news is I'm about to finish my Solana airdrops that I started back in December, because Camino have already taken their snapshot and their token drops next month, and MarginFi I think is like the month after that. So I'm going to wind those positions down. Solana's made a lovely move since I've been in there, so I've got a nice little uplift from that. Anyway, that's going to free up some capital for me to put into the market, or maybe I just ride Solana to $1,000. I'm not too sure. We're getting pretty close to 9:30, so I'm going to say, has anyone got any questions? If they don't, I think we'll knock it on the head. Thanks everyone who contributed to the poll. 60% don't think it's a big enough correction. 40% think it is. I'm kind of the view, I don't believe it's a big enough correction, but it might be all the correction that we get. It doesn't look like anyone's got anything further to add. So thanks a lot. I'm definitely going to look into Based. I have already bought some in it, as I've mentioned, but I think it's a good video to have a look at, particularly with the interest that we have with Tau. Let's have a look at the similarities there. I know you asked me about Space Mash. I actually did a whole thing on it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write it up and I'll post it in Discord. Interesting-ish project, but I don't have any spare capital, so I'm not going to be, you can't see it. Here it is. Interesting enough project, but I don't have any spare capital, so I'm probably not going to be investing within it. I'll give my views on Discord for those that have already invested, and we'll go from there. But thanks, everyone. There is a call on Thursday, and there will also be a call on Tuesday next week. The opportunity to sign up for the cuddle is now out, so please, if you do want to go to that in May, then get your tickets. And yeah, I'll be there for that one, so I look forward to seeing you all again. Other than that, enjoy the rest of your evening, have a great night, and I will speak to you all soon. Cheers now.